All right, chapter 5. What is real estate? So finally, we got past a lot of the regulatory stuff, the laws, the rules, the regulation, the requirements for getting licensed, anti-discriminatory laws, and things of that nature. And now we could finally start learning about real estate, even though we kind of skipped forward a little bit. We were talking about real estate. Otherwise, if we just stuck to the topic at hand, it would be boring. Not that it wasn't boring already, but it made it a little bit more entertaining when we talked about some real estate stuff, giving some examples. So, in this chapter 5, what is real estate? Good question. If you want to get into business, right? So, it's in this chapter we're going to identify the characteristics of real estate. We're going to learn what the term real estate means. We're going to learn the difference between land and real estate, and we're going to distinguish between the characteristics of personal property, what is a personal property, and what is a fixture. Um, Now, real estate can be described as the bundle of rights. Here you got a picture here where you got a bundle of sticks tied together. You often see attorneys and real estate agents taught about the bundle of sticks. All the sticks represent the rights that you get. Um, and, some sticks can be taken out of that bundle, um, and you don't get them. Um, so you can sell real estate uh, and and keep some of your interest in that property when you pass it on to the next owner. So the next owner, they're getting the real estate plus all their rights, but some of them could be kept. Uh, let's first go over this. The bundle of rights is the right of possession or season. That's the exclusive right to possess and own the property. The right to use the property in any legal manner. The right of quiet enjoyment. That's to enjoy the premises without having to worry about being disturbed by others. You know, um, for instance, if you lease property, what's happening when you lease property? An owner is handing over possession to their real estate to you and turning over all of their rights to you. Well, not all of them. They're keeping some of them, like you don't have the right to sell their property or mortgage it when you're renting it, right? But you do have the right to quiet enjoyment. They do pass those rights on to you. The landlord doesn't have the right to enter your property. Only one person is going to possess these rights at a time. You don't have the right. The landlord doesn't have the right to enter your property while you're in possession of it, while you're leasing it from them, and you have their rights. They could say, "Well, it's my property. I go anywhere I want." Oh no, you can't just use the key to enter the front door because I'm renting it now. I have the right to quiet enjoyment. That I don't where I don't have to expect you to use your pass key to walk in on me when I'm in the shower or something. So the right of exclusion, that's the right to use the property without having others entering it or occupying it. And the right of disposition or alienation, to be able to sell the property, give it away, lease it. You transfer those rights to someone else, whether it's forever or a limited period of time. Okay, so the term alienation we're going to get several times in this book. Alienation, the simplest definition for it is it's a transfer of property. And that can be done uh, voluntarily or involuntarily, while you're alive or after you die, right? So, voluntary alienation, you could sell the property, give it away, devise it. That means to leave it in a will to somebody, lease it, license it, or dedicate it. Dedication is when you give land to the government for a public use. Now, some forms of involuntary alienation are foreclosure. That's in New Jersey. That's uh, a judicial process, has to go through the court system. Foreclosure, uh, and that's when you owe somebody money. Basically, they could go after your assets so that they could sell it and then recoup their money. That's foreclosure, basically. Escheat, it's when you die without a will. and no natural heirs can be located, the state will get your property. Um, Partition, that's involuntary form of alienation as well. If you own a property with someone else, and then you don't want to own it anymore with someone else because you want to be able to sell your portion. Well, you could sell it, but if you can't find a buyer that's willing to become a partner with some stranger, so you're having a tough time selling your interest, your partial ownership interest in a property. Your co-owners won't buy you out or don't have the money to. Are you stuck being a partner with them? No. You can take them to court to see if it's possible to physically partition the property. And if that can't be done, the court will order the property sold and each party will get their share of the cash, right? But that's called a partition. Or a suit for adverse possession. This is another form of involuntary alienation where it's kind of, some people refer to it as squatters' rights, where somebody, if they've been using your property long enough for a period of time, as outlined by by the rules of the law in your state, that they could take you to court and claim ownership of the property. So that if they successfully do that, that's a form of involuntary alienation as well. Now, within these rights are further rights to improve, devise, that means to leave by will, mortgage, encumber, cultivate, explore, mine, build, lease, license, dedicate, give away, abandon, share, trade, or exchange your property. All right. So now those things that we just went over, I guess we could do some highlights of them now in the book here under bundle of rights. You don't need to study what all the rights are: possession, use, enjoyment. You don't need to do that. Just understand what the term bundle of rights is, though. So when a person buys real estate, what are they actually buying? They're purchasing the real estate, the land, and all the rights previously held by the seller. And sometimes those rights may have been limited because some of them weren't passed on to that owner, the current owner. And now when you're buying it from them, they cannot create rights and give you rights that they do not possess. They can only pass on the rights that they have. Right? And then highlight here, devise means to leave by will. I give you a cross reference here, page 376. And let me know when you guys have those things down.
Got it.
You guys are good? All right. So I put together this page of death terms for you. These terms are also in chapter 20. So that's why we're going to go to chapter 20 after this chapter. And after 5, we're going to go to 20. Then we're going to come back to 6. But here in chapter 5, we're going to go. I got this list, and I also have this same slide in chapter 20. Let's run it down real quick. An heir. What is an heir? We're not talking about a rabbit, a hair, a hare's hair. We were talking about an heir. An
Natural blood.
heir,
It's a natural blood
yeah,
relationship.
it's a natural blood relative who can inherit your belongings of the relative who died. So they're a natural blood relative who can lay claim to inherit your stuff. Okay. Um, devise is to transfer or leave property by will to somebody in a will, your last will and testament. Devisor is the one who's leaving you that property. Remember, I told you words that end in OR is the one that's giving whatever the root word's talking about.
Yeah.
And words that end in EE is the one who's receiving it. Well, devise is the person who leaves those belongings to you in a will. And the devisee is the one who's named in the will to receive those things. They don't need to be relatives. They could be your friend. They could be anybody, right? You could devise your property to anybody in a will. Okay. Now, heirs, they have to be natural blood relatives who could claim that they can inherit things from you. The devisee is one who's been named in a will to get those things, and they don't need to be a relative. Demise, I just put this is not a death term, but I put it here because it's demise and devise. People often mix them up. So I put it here just so you could study them together. Demise, every lease has a demising clause in it that says that the landlord is to let the premises and the tenant is to take possession of it. So demise is a transfer of property by lease. Do not confuse it with devise, which is a transfer of property by will upon death. Okay, they sound very similar, and there's only one letter difference in them, really. Demise, devise. The one that sounds like death is not, right?
I was about to say that.
Right? Yeah, it's the opposite of the way it sounds. Don't shoot the messenger. I didn't create these words. Yeah, I know demise. It sounds like that's the one you finally met your demise,
Yeah.
right? But it's not. Demise is a transfer of property by lease, and devise is a transfer of property by death. I don't know. I don't get it. Just study it. And testate means that you prepared a will. Intestate means you did not. Testator is a man who makes a will, and a testatrix is a woman, a female who makes a will. Yes, gendered terms once again. I thought you were getting into Latin. These are Latin terms. Terms that are used in legal terminology here. Now, probate is a court proceeding that determines who the natural heirs are or to confirm who the devisees are that are named in the will. Now, no matter if you had a will or not, your property needs to go through probate when somebody dies before anybody can get lay claim to or get any assets of the person who died. The purpose of probate is to ensure that those people who are claiming to be heirs are in fact your heirs, or if the people named in the will are in fact those that were named in the will. And it's to make sure that all debts have been paid before any assets, anything is paid out. Mainly your taxes, because we know two things are certain in life. And what are they?
Life and death.
Death and taxes.
Death and taxes.
You're all going to die at some point, and you all got to pay your taxes. Hell, you got to pay your taxes even after you die. Right? So
death tax.
Death and taxes, those are two things that are certain in life. We're all going to die, and we all got to pay taxes even after we die. That's what probate's for, to make sure you paid your taxes before anybody gets your stuff that you left behind. Now, when you write a will, it's very important to name somebody to be in charge of your will, to be in charge of making sure that all your final wishes are carried out according to what you wrote in this document called a will, the last will and testament. Now, so this should be a trusted person, right? Somebody that you trust and have confidence in that is going to make sure that your final wishes are carried out, whether it's your relative or your best friend. Now, an executor is a man that you name in your will to make sure that those final wishes are carried out. An executrix is a woman, a female that you name in your will to be that person that makes sure that your final wishes are carried out. Now, if you did not name an executor or an executrix in your will, the court will appoint an administrator who's usually going to be an attorney, but not necessarily. It could be that you just forgot or didn't know to name somebody in your will, and you have a family member that's willing to do it. The court could appoint them. But if you don't name somebody in the will, a judge is going to appoint somebody to make sure your final wishes are carried out according to the will. And in exchange, they get 10% of whatever your assets are.
The court or the person?
The administrator. Now, descent and distribution is the law that determines who the natural heirs are if you die without a will, if you die intestate. Who gets your stuff if you die without a will? Well, every state has their own laws of called the descent and distribution, which determine that. And we'll go over that in chapter 20. So when we skip over to chapter 20, we could find out if you don't have a will, who's going to get your stuff if you die without one? Now, if they cannot locate any natural heirs or relatives, your stuff will go to the state by the process of escheat. Basically, they'll sell all your stuff at an auction and put all that money in a fund for 1 year, in which time your heirs can step forward to claim it. But if they don't, the state gets it. Do you want the state to get your stuff? Then you
Oh,
should
yeah, right.
probably. Yeah,
Yeah,
they already
right.
got enough of my shit, right? They don't need any more of my stuff after I die, right? So you probably should get a will. I know you guys are young. Nobody wants to think of their demise so early. I'm going to live forever, right? But
Yeah.
you never know. You could step off a curb and get hit by a bus, or you get one of these crazy wackos that push you in front of one. So we'll go over the process of making a will too. Now, a legacy or bequests. What is a legacy? A legacy is your personal property that you've amassed during your lifetime that you leave behind. And the bequest is your wishes of who you want to get it. Okay. I I bequeath to thee my vast fortune of $4 in my bank account. Okay, that's how you may hear it in movies, anyway, right? Your legacy of $4, you're leaving behind your bequest. I bequeath to thee my vast fortune of $4, right? Okay, now dower and courtesy. These are ancient rights from New Jersey between husband and wife. Dower begins with a doe. Anybody know what a doe is?
A deer.
A deer, a female deer, right? So doe is a deer, a female deer. So dower begins with a doe, and a doe is the female's rights, the wife's rights, in all of her husband's property upon his death. Courtesy is a similar right that men have in their wife's property upon her death. Okay. Yeah, the way to remember this, the way I just told it to you. Dower begins with a doe, and a doe is a deer, female deer. That's the wife's right. And courtesy, because men should be courteous to women, that's the man's right of what in the wife's property. So dower is an ancient right in which a wife has certain interest upon her husband's death in any real estate he owned during their marriage. Courtesy is a similar right that the husband has in the wife's property that she owned during their marriage. New Jersey abolished the creation of new dower and courtesy rights on May 28th, 1980. Marriages after this date, the spouse only has rights of interest in the primary marital residence, and of course, anything that you leave them in a will. But anybody that was married before May 28, 1980 still has dower and courtesy rights. They didn't abolish all dower courtesy rights. They just abolished the creation of new dower and courtesy rights. So we need to know for exams, dower is the wife's right in the husband's property, courtesy is the husband's right in the wife's property. And what is the date that New Jersey abolished the creation of new dower and courtesy rights? May 28, 1980, you do need to know that date. You will probably get it on exam. Now, why do we need to know about that? We're real estate people. Well, to know who needs to sign listing agreements or sales contracts. If only one spouse is listed as the owner on a property, when were they married? If they were married before May 28th, 1980, they both need to sign all relevant documents, even if only one is listed as the owner. If they were married after May 28th, 1980, only the one listed as the owner needs to sign. Now, by the way, missingmoney.com, this is a government run website. It is free. You don't need to put credit cards or anything like that in there. New Jersey pulled out of missingmoney.com and instead created their own page called unclaimedproperty.nj.gov. So if you have a relative, if you or a relative has money being owed to them, it could be that you have a relative maybe that died and they had some assets and they were never didn't have a will or anything. They could be sitting out there waiting to be claimed. Or, you know, I've had a girl in this class that used to work at a store in the mall, and the boss never gave her last check. Instead, he turned it over to the state. So she claimed it on missingmoney.com. But missingmoney.com, New Jersey does not participate in that site anymore, but other states do. Unclaimedproperty.nj.gov, that's New Jersey's page now. You guys should look up your own names on both of these websites and your family's names. Usually I have at least one person in every class that has some kind of money owed to them or their relatives that they find on one of these pages. So give it a go. See what happens. You plug your name in. The least information you put in possible, the more results that come back that you could, and then you can narrow it down. All right. So you never know. You may have money owed to you or your relatives, and you may be thinking, "Oh, nah, I don't got nothing owed." Well, search your name. Search your name. Search your parents' names. Search your relatives' names. Most classes have at least one person who has money owed to them. Okay. And don't worry, I only charge a 10% finder's fee. Kidding. I used to, not in class. I actually used to do this as a business. This was one of the first jobs I had as a kid. Well, one of the first real jobs, other than actually, I don't want to say a real job. Other than me like sweeping up a bus station and stuff like that, you know, this was one of the first jobs I created a business for myself as a skip tracer, trying to track down people who the government owed money to. And then in exchange, I helped them get that. In exchange, I earned some money. Okay. Now they got websites for this. Okay. So let's continue on. By the way, you guys write down those websites. You should check them out.
Take a screenshot of the page.
Yeah.
Yeah, I screenshot it.
You should definitely check them out here. I'll even copy the links. I'm going to send them to you here. You should definitely check out these and let me know if you, or let us know, share with us if you find anything. You know, it's good to see that we're helping people get back in touch with the money that's due them. All right. Or if you could claim money, maybe you had a relative that died or something and they have assets that are sitting out there waiting to be claimed by a relative. You know, you never know. It's worth putting your name in there. I mean, like I told you, I had that one young girl in class, and she put a claim in there. She used to work at Hot Topic in you know, what's that, Woodbridge or Menlo Mall, and she never got paid her last check, and that money was hanging out there on unclaimed property page. She went there and she claimed it, and she got her final paycheck. So you never know. All right, so land. What is land? Land refers to the Earth's surface, including the water and anything permanently attached to it by nature. Everything extending downward from the surface of the Earth to the center and upward to infinity. This includes subsurface rights, that's anything below the surface of the Earth or in the Earth, air rights, anything above the surface, and water rights. Okay, now here we're not specifically talking about the right to use the water. When we're talking about water rights here, we're talking about if you own land that has water on it or next to it, you know, bordering it. What exactly is it that you own? We're gonna get into that. So yeah, we're gonna get into some sciency words that we're gonna learn about too. And then a parcel. What is a parcel? It's a specific tract of land that has legally defined boundaries to it. So basically, it's been surveyed, measured, and mapped out. Now, real estate is the same definition of land plus man made improvements. What is an improvement? It includes both buildings erected on the land as well as streets, utilities, sewers, paved roads, and other manufactured additions that are added to the property. So, what is real estate? It's land plus all man made improvements. Mm-hmm. So, the concept of real estate also includes the rights that go with the property, the bundle of rights. So, real estate can be defined as land plus all man made improvements and the bundle of rights, all the rights that you get. So let's do some highlighting. Page 94, 95. Okay, good.
Yep.
Just writing bundle of rights down there. Or up there is on the top of page 95. So, the term land and real estate are often used interchangeably to describe the same thing, but they do have important differences in them. Land is the surface of the earth, including all water and anything permanently attached to it by nature, which doesn't require you to plant seeds or plants every year for them to come back. Like trees, grass, bushes, those things come back every year on their own. You don't need to cultivate them every year. And everything below the surface to the center of the earth, and everything above it to infinity. And the rights, interest, and benefits that go with it. In other words, the bundle of rights. Real estate also includes man made improvements. So it's the same definition of land plus man made improvements. And that can be described as two ways: land plus man made improvements and all the rights, interest, and benefits that go with it. Or you could just simply say land plus man made improvements plus the bundle of rights. Okay. All right. You guys know what the word tangible means, like for a tangible asset? If tangible means you could touch it, like my cell phone. I could touch it. So it's a tangible asset. You can't, there are some assets that you may have that you cannot touch, like your rights. Do you value your rights?
But you can touch.
But you can't touch a right, right? Or a beautiful ocean view. Does that add value to your real estate? Beautiful ocean view or beachfront property, right?
Yes.
But you can't touch it. You can't touch a view, a nice view. So it's an intangible asset. So there's also another. So I'm teaching you the words tangible and intangible, but there's also another word for it. Another word for tangible is corporeal. Tangible and corporeal mean the same thing. It's an asset that you can touch or feel. Intangible assets are something that you cannot touch, like views or your rights, like a lease. A lease is where an owner intentionally transfer gives you access to their real estate and temporarily transfers all their rights to that property, except for the right to sell it or mortgage it, right? For a limited period of time. And because you do not own the real estate, it is not considered a tangible asset. It is an intangible. A lease is an intangible asset that is personal property. It's not real property because you don't own the real estate. And it's intangible because what does a lease symbolize? Even though you can touch the paper that it's printed on, what does a lease symbolize? Your rights to be occupying that property. So a lease is considered personal property that's an intangible or incorporeal asset. Although you can touch the paper that it's printed on, a lease signifies the rights that the tenant has to occupy and possess someone else's property for a limited period of time. So it's an intangible or incorporeal asset that is considered personal property because you don't own the real estate. So let's highlight that now on page 95. Real estate is then defined as the Earth's surface extending downward to the center of the earth and upward into space, including things permanently attached to it by nature or by people, and all the rights and benefits and interest in it. Corporeal is a tangible asset, and incorporeal is an intangible asset, like views or rights. And then write down there, a lease is a personal property that is an incorporeal or intangible asset.
Got it.
I got it.
Got it? All right. So, rights to the property, because you have rights to a property, does not mean that you have ownership of the property. You could possess rights, you could have rights to someone's real estate and not own the real estate. You know, air rights, water rights, subsurface or mineral rights. So, subsurface or mineral rights are the rights to the natural resources lying below the Earth's surface. Uh, Sometimes people just refer them as mineral rights. But that could also be subsurface rights, could also just be referring to the space beneath the surface of the earth as well. Or it could be the minerals, the oil, gas, silver, etc., other kinds of minerals that are in the ground. For instance, I had a girl in one of my classes. She moved here from Texas, and she said it's a common thing there. When you sell your real estate, you keep the mineral rights to the oil and gas that's in the ground. And then they have some sort of further agreement where they're allowed to explore the property and then drill to try to get it out of the ground. Because it's one thing to have rights to the minerals in the ground, it's another thing to be able to get them out. So you got to have some sort of an agreement in place that allows you to do that on someone else's property because she no longer owns the property. So she moved here to New Jersey with her mom, and she sold her property in Texas and kept the mineral rights, and then had an oil exploration company looking to see if there was oil anywhere and set up a rig and drill. And she said they found oil, but they didn't hit the mother lode or anything. But she gets a dividend check every month, enough to pay off her and her mom's mortgage here in New Jersey. Not bad
Not bad
for
at
not
all.
for a property that you don't own anymore, paying you out like that. Not bad. So these are the subsurface rights, the anything beneath the surface, the oil, the gas, the coal, the gold, the silver, or whatever kinds of other minerals there may be lying below the surface there. So note that rights to the property, once again, are not ownership of it. Your rights can be sold or leased independently of the property itself, like air rights. The rights to use the air above land can be sold or leased independently of the land that's beneath it. Such air rights over railroads, which may be used to construct large office buildings, like in New York City above Grand Central Station. You got the MetLife building there, right?
Yep.
Used to formerly called the Pan American building. That used to be the largest commercial airline in the world. All right. So FAA, the federal. So does that mean that you could prevent airplanes from flying above your house because you own everything above it to infinity?
No.
No, because the FAA has exclusive jurisdiction of everything above 500 feet above the highest point of your property. Here's that. Here's a picture I drew of the yeah, ground level over here. At the street level, you got a bunch of stores on the first level. Beneath the surface of the earth here, you got the actual train station of Grand Central Station. And in the front of the building, the MetLife building, you have the entrance to Grand Central Station up here. And then above the Grand Central Station, that's beneath the surface of the earth, you have the MetLife building. So you could have one little area of space where you have three different owners. One that owns the train station beneath the surface. You got storefronts at the ground level, and then you have an office building above that. But that office buildings don't float and hover in the air, so they have to own small pieces of the land itself, which to construct their foundational supports. If that makes sense to you guys. So here we got a couple of cutaways here, or pictures. Here's the main entrance to Grand Central Station, and then behind it you got the MetLife building. But Grand Central Station goes back further. Let me give you some little bit of an angle view. You can see this is sitting behind it, right? See, you got storefronts on the front. You got the Grand Central Station entryway. Here are the escalators going down to the train station. Here's a better view, a cutaway. Here's that big entrance to Grand Central Station. And then it goes beneath the surface where all the trains are and such. And then you have the MetLife building standing above it. Well, at the time, this was the Pan Am building. See, this is the way it used to look. Then they tore down this portion here so that they could build the foundational supports for the MetLife building where it stands today. And then there's where the escalators are going down. There it is with the Pan Am logo on it. Why did they construct this building? Anybody know? Why did they go through all these issues and zoning and everything and trying to deal with the Historic Society on this so that they could construct the Pan Am building above Grand Central Station?
I mean, it's not a bad location.
No, it's not, but you got a little more reason behind that? Do you know why they may have built that?
Nah.
Pan Am being the largest airline in the world at the time, they actually built a helipad on the roof so that helicopters can take off and land from the roof there. And then you could get down on the elevator, take it down to the basement, and then hop on a train or go to the street level and hail a taxi cab. Or, it's hell getting in and out of the city. So people can take the helicopters coming in to New York and land on the roof and then go down to the street level, hail a taxi cab, or get on a subway or a train there, right? Or you could take your taxi to the Pan Am building, take the elevator to the roof, and hop on a helicopter, which will fly you to one of the airports in the area, which can take hours to drive through getting out of New York City. You guys ever deal with any of that before? Going through New
Hmm.
York City and then trying to get out and get to the airports.
Yep.
So they had a nice, cheap, inexpensive helicopter ride that you could hop on and fly in and fly out every day. Here's an actual picture of one of the big helicopters landing on the roof, the Pan Am building. Pretty good idea, huh? Do you know why you're not allowed to have helicopters landing on roofs anymore in New York City? Considered a no-fly zone because this happened. The
Hmm.
landing gear on one of these helicopters that had the landing gear attached to the sides like this had a stress point. It snapped off and the helicopter flipped on its side. See, these are different types of helicopters. This one has two rotor blades. This one's this one's a huge helicopter, actually, but this one has the landing gear on the sides. And one of them snapped off. It flipped on its side. The rotor blades snapped off. One of them actually went like this off the building and came back in to the offices. Yeah. And then the landing gear, where did the landing gear go? It actually went all the way down to the ground level where it killed a pregnant woman that was at the ground level. So amazingly, more people did not die in this helicopter accident than what did. But that put an end to the air travel on May 16th, 1977. Here's that picture of that helicopter that crashed on the roof. All right. How did they build this? We're just throwing
Hmm.
around ideas.
Hmm.
Can you just build a structure over a city street?
No.
So how did this come about? You got two buildings attached by this structure here, this catwalk. We're just tossing around ideas. I don't even know. We're just tossing around some ideas. I want you guys to start thinking out of the box.
How you're asking how did they build it or how did they get
Yeah,
permission to build it?
how were they able to build this? I mean, you can't just build over a city street, right? So how did they come about building this?
Well, my assumption is they either the person owns both properties or they came into agreement to
But there's a
then
but
and
there's a
then
city street beneath it.
yeah, I mean, and they have to ask for permission. They have to go to the city and ask for the permission for it.
So anybody can build over a city street.
If
Hmm.
if the city
No,
gives you permission, yeah.
I mean, if you get the permits, yeah, I think.
Okay, so maybe yeah, but would you build a structure, like a permanent structure like this, if you only got like a permission that can be revoked at any time? I mean,
Yeah.
I'd probably try to buy the air rights maybe from the city if they're willing to sell it so that you could build this structure. Or maybe the person owns both of these buildings and they also own the ground that was beneath it. So they built this structure here, and then as they paved that road, they dedicated it to the municipality. So maybe they owned all this property, and then they gave the street to the city. Now it's a city street. So that's why, and they kept the air rights above it. Just tossing around some ideas here.
So they did a switch.
Yeah, I mean,
I give it the ground, you give me the air.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
that's
Well,
what.
well, Well, you already own the air rights. If you own the land, you own the air rights above it, right? So maybe they gave the land, but they kept the air rights. Because remember, you can sell or lease the your rights independently to the land itself. So maybe they gave the land to the government and they kept the air rights above the land. Just spitballing some ideas here.
That's the way to do it.
Because look, I mean, have you guys ever heard of this before where you could actually sell the property and keep rights to it, like air rights or mineral rights or what have you, and lease them independently? You know, we're learning new things here every day a little bit, and we're starting to think out of the box, about the norm. Most people, you think that, hey, you either own the real estate or you don't. Nobody can build above my property. Well, if they own the air rights above it, they can. All right, now let's learn about water rights. And I'll apologize in advance. Don't shoot the messenger. I'm teaching you some science now. You didn't think you were going to take a real estate class and learn about science stuff, did you?
Yeah.
Well, we're going to learn some sciencey terms. Now, when we talk about water rights, there are types of water rights that talk about your right to use water, but that's not what we're talking about here. When we're talking about water rights here, we're talking about what do you own as far as the land goes, if it has water on it or next to it. Well, first we need to determine what type of water rights do you have, littoral or riparian. So what's the difference between littoral rights and riparian rights is something you need to know. So land bordering on oceans, seas, or large lakes affected by tidal currents is known as littoral. Land bordered or traversed by a stream or waterway is known as riparian. I'll give you a better definition than that in a minute. So an easy way to remember this, let's see, what do they say, is littoral rights refer to lakes and large bodies of water. And riparian rights thinks of little rivers and streams and waterways. But the key to it here is that littoral property, you have littoral property rights when you own land that borders water that's controlled by the tide. High tide and low tide. The tide goes up, the tide goes down. But most importantly, they're navigable waters. That means commercial shipping can go through them. So if a stream is identified as not navigable on a federal survey map, its bed is owned by the owner or owners of the adjoining land. So that means they could actually own the land under the water, who have certain riparian rights that allow them to use the water. So you could put a dock there and then dock your own boats and such because you own the land that's under the water. So you could build a dock there because they're non-navigable waters. Non-navigable waterways, you could actually own the land under the water. Or let me word it another way. You could own the land that the water is sitting on. You have water on your land. Here we have an image here where we have a riparian waterway and a littoral waterway. Littoral is navigable river. You have a boat there. And non-navigable water or streams of two properties, we have lot A on the left and lot B on the right. If two properties are separated by a stream, the center of the stream becomes the property line. So each property owner owns up to the center of the stream. If that waterway is navigable where commercial shipping can go through it, each property owner only owns up to the edge of the high water mark, the edge of the water where it is at high tide. You guys ever go to the beach and see the stains in the sand where the water was up to when it's low tide and the tide is out?
Yeah.
If you have a beachfront property there, you only own the land up to that stain in the sand, not beyond that. Beyond that, it's publicly owned. So here I put together this slide for you. You may want to snap a picture of this slide. Has all the water rights and water terms that you need to know. So once again, the definition I have here is littoral. Begins with the letter L, like lakes and large bodies of water, like the ocean, that are affected by the tides. But the key is that they are navigable waters, meaning commercial shipping can go through them. So the landowners only own the land up to the mean high water mark. The mean is the average. It discounts any of the, you know, extremes, like when you have a storm where the water gets flooding and gets higher than normal. That's only temporary. Um, and then riparian, you have riparian begins with an R, like little rivers and streams and babbling brooks. Um, don't think the raging Mississippi River, because that one's a little bit unique. So riparian, you have land that borders water or has water sitting on it that is non-navigable. Commercial shipping does not go through it. It is not controlled by high tide and low tide. So the property owner can actually own the land that's under the water, that the water is sitting on or running across. Can you have a little river on your property? A
Yeah.
stream or a river on your property? Or
Yeah.
a pond or even a lake on your property, depending on the size of your property? Sure, you can. All right. So that water's sitting on or running across your property. So now that we can identify the difference between littoral and riparian, why does it matter? What do you own if you have littoral property rights?
The lane. Wait, littoral or until the ages.
Yep, you own the land up to the high water mark, to the edge of the water. If you have riparian property rights, you could actually own the land under the water.
That's why I see when you go to lake houses that they build like the boat what's that called?
Yeah, the dock.
The dock, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Because it may be on their land, the water. Okay, so now that we know how to identify littoral and riparian property rights, because you're going to need to be able to know and know what you own when you own land that has littoral or riparian property rights. Let's learn some of those sciencey words now. Um, avulsion, avulsion
Oh,
is the sudden change of a course of a stream. Avulsion is the sudden change of a course of a stream. You know how a stream is flowing in one direction? Well, it could be flowing in one direction for hundreds or thousands or even millions of years. And then it carves out some dirt at the waterbed and exposes a rock. And now that water's starting to hit the rock. And then underneath the water is starting to jettison in a different direction until it carves away a piece of the land. And now the stream changes direction, starts flowing in a different direction. Okay. If that were to happen, the property lines, if it was two properties were separated by the stream, the center of the stream was the property line, and the stream changed its course, the property line would not move. It would remain where it had always been. Okay. But what do we call that sudden change of a course of a stream? Avulsion.
avulsion.
Yeah, it's a sudden change of a course of a stream. Avulsion. The term erosion, you guys probably heard in your life. I don't need to teach you this one, probably, right? Erosion's the wearing away of something by wind, water, or rust. Right? You guys heard this word before, right? Erosion. Something. The beaches are getting eroded every time there's a storm. What does that mean? You know, the storm is pulling the sand off the beaches and wearing away the beach. So we have to replenish our beaches here in New Jersey every now and then in certain areas with new sand, right? So erosion is the gradual wearing away of land by the wind or water. Whereas avulsion is the sudden change of a course of a stream. Accretion is the opposite of erosion because erosion's the wearing away of land by wind or water, the gradual wearing away of land by wind or water. Accretion is an increase of land by the water. So the water, instead of wearing away the land, it deposits additional solid material, that solid material being the sand, dirt, rock, etc. And what do we call that solid material, that sand, dirt, rock, or soil that was deposited by the water? It's called alluvion. Yeah, though. So alluvion. So we have two words here, avulsion and alluvion. And if we were to put them next to each other on exams, it could be very confusing because they both look the same. You know, they both have A's, U, V. Oh, they both have A, U, L, I, O, N, but avulsion has an S for sudden change of a course of a stream. Alluvion has two L's, not just one. The one where you gained an L, you gained some dirt. That's the way I remember it. So alluvion is what you call that solid material that was deposited by the water. So you gain an L, you gain some dirt. That's the solid material that you've gained. The water deposited that additional dirt, sand, rock through the process of accretion. The process of the water depositing the material is called accretion. The material deposited is called alluvion. And lastly, we have reliction. That's when the tide recedes from the land. The water recedes from the land, like with low tide, the water goes out, leaving the land exposed, like at the beach, right? Just imagine for a minute if the tide goes out and it never comes back. But Victor, that doesn't happen because global warming, the sea levels are rising everywhere. Really? Can you explain to me the Meadowlands then? That all used to be underwater, completely underwater. And then the tides went out and they never came back. And today we have the Garden State Parkway and the Turnpike. We have that
American
big,
Dreams.
the American Dream Mall and the airports over there, right? So that's not man-made. Man didn't remove the water. That water the tide went out and it never came back. So where did the water go? I don't know. Maybe there was a earthquake under the water and a canyon, separated, and then the water filled that canyon. The Earth is not a perfectly smooth circle. We have mountains and we got valleys and canyons. So some places the sea levels are rising, and other places they're falling. So reliction begins with the letters RE, like the words receding. The water recedes from the land, kind of like my hairline receding. Yeah, Jonathan.
Mine receded.
Receded. Okay. So reliction begins with an RE, like receding. So that's a way to remember what reliction is. Reliction begins with RE, receding. So the water recedes from the land and never comes back. That's basically what it is. Or it could be a riverbed dries up, or a pond or lake dries up for whatever reason. Maybe the water didn't recede, but it actually just dried up and never was replenished again. The water never came back on its own. So now you have more usable land. It doesn't create land because that land was always there. It was just under the water. Okay. It's just you have more usable land now. Okay. So it's not the creation of new land, it's the creation of dry land because the tide went out, never came back, or the riverbed dried up. Okay. So these definitions I got here are probably a little bit better to be studying. They're a little more explanatory to make it easier to remember. But you will absolutely on school and state exam get most of these words. I'm telling you right now, you will. So you'll need to study these water terms: littoral, riparian, avulsion, accretion, alluvion, reliction. So let's highlight them in the book, and then we'll make a little notes here also where I wrote in some notes. And then there's an interesting little factoid down here at the bottom that New Jersey has approximately. Does anybody know how big New Jersey is, like size wise, miles? How long is it? How wide is it?
No.
New Jersey is approximately 170 miles long and about 70 miles wide. So we have approximately 124 miles of coastline, with about half of that being owned by municipalities, 1/4 under private ownership, and the state and federal government own about 14 miles, for like military bases and Coast Guard and such.
Got it.
Did you get the notes here too that says after reliction says exposing land?
Exposing land, not creating it. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. You still writing, Kevin?
Yes, one
Okay.
more.
All right, take your time. I'm not rushing you.
Got it.
Okay. So once again, littoral rights. You only own the land up to the mean high water mark. If you have beachfront property, you only own the land up to the edge of the sand during high tide. Okay, once again, here's the water rights slide. Navigable waters. Littoral property owners only own the land up to the mean high water mark. You have littoral property rights when you own land that borders navigable waters controlled by the tides, meaning that commercial shipping can go through it. You have riparian rights when the when you have land that borders non-navigable waters or has a lake or a pond or a river that's non-navigable. And if two properties are separated by a stream, the center of the stream becomes the property line. So each property owner owns the land under the water up to the center. But if that stream were to suddenly change its course and run off in a different direction, well, the property line would not move. It would remain where it always had been. Here in Tom's River, they're putting up some beach erosion fencing to try to prevent the beaches from getting eroded because Tom's River has a problem with that, where the water pounds the beaches and it pulls the sand back out into the ocean, taking away the land. So they try to put up these erosion fences that hold some of the sand back, that as the water pounds the beaches, it doesn't take all the sand just pull it out, that this fencing will try to keep some of it. So they put this up during storm seasons. Here's an example of accretion where the water deposits additional solid material, that's sand, rock, or soil. In these instances here, it's not so positive, right? This looks like it was a storm that hammered these beaches and destroyed some buildings. You got sand that moves blocks inland and kind of tore up the roads over here, right? You guys ever watch the show Ozark on Netflix?
Yep.
Ozark.
Yeah, you ever hear that, Kev?
I might.
Okay. Well, no, you'd know it if you saw it. You'd know
Oh,
it.
Yeah, I probably do. I haven't seen so many things that by name sometimes it's just difficult to remember, but
Okay, so this is a show where all these people are bad guys. You know, you have drug growers and
Marty
then
Bird is a bad guy?
cartels. Well, he's money
oh
laundering
yeah.
for the drug cartels. You know,
I start seeing it, but I haven't. It's a
I
I see. I know what you're talking about now. Sorry.
I mean, the first episode slaps you in the face. You know, it slaps you in the face and it asks you who's your daddy. You know? It's a pretty brutal, a lot of violence in there. But okay, so all these people are bad people. You know, they work. He's a money launderer for cartels. She's an attorney for the cartels. The other guy grows poppy seeds for whatever drug it is. I forget they make out of poppy seeds there. But anyway. I'm teaching you guys these words in class. You're going to start to notice them more because these words are used around you all the time, and sometimes they just fly over your head. You know, I didn't know what that word meant, so I kind of ignored it and I just paid attention to the storyline. But now that you know some of these words, when you start watching these programs, you're going to hear them using these terms. And now you can be, oh, I know that. I know what that means, you know? So I got an example of that right here from this popular show called Ozark. This is from season 2, episode 9 from Ozark on Netflix. Let me dim our videos here for a second and I'll play the video and you can see how it's used. In this episode here, they're using the terms water. They're going to be using the water right terms and eminent domain. Remember what eminent domain is? I brought it up. I mentioned it even though we didn't formally go over it yet. Eminent domain is when the government can take the property of a private citizen. However, they need to be justly compensated. Okay, so let's see.
Jacob? Excuse me if I don't shake your hand.
I'm fine skipping pleasantries.
Can you guys hear this fine?
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Jacob? Excuse me if I don't shake your hand.
I'm fine skipping pleasantries.
Inspect this over to a reef. The Almighty himself could not convince us to lift our blockade.
What about the federal government? You know who I spent the morning with? Your friends over at the power company. I wanted to know how it was that they were able to get your ancestors off of their land so quickly back in 1929.
No mystery there. Lies, theft, intimidation.
Well, they got an assist from a little thing called riparian rights.
Army.
Riparian rights are the laws that say who owns land under a body of water. It's kind of crazy, right? I mean, whoever stops to consider the land under a lake, or in this case, the Missouri River, which last time I checked was a federal waterway. What this means, Jacob, is that the instant you flooded your land and connected it to the Missouri, you ceded all of that flooded land to the U.S. government.
Which is how I managed to obtain this written order guaranteeing our workers access to the vote. Now, if you defy this order, we can have the U.S. Marshals escort them.
And the land that you need for access roads and parking lots to get the people to your precious vote. We own all of it. What's to stop us parking cars all around the water's edge?
Eminent domain. The feds are going to give all the surrounding land to our business partners to build shopping malls and hotels and, yes, access roads because it's in their financial interest. The tax revenue from said development is going to be massive, just like it was in 1929. They own it all. Above, around, and below.
That's the moment that that man realized that he's been defeated. All right. So we don't need to continue on anymore with this video, but you get the point. They showed you how in this episode they were using real estate terms and water rights and eminent domain. And this was a pivotal part of this show right here. I don't want to give away the details of it if you didn't see it. So we'll leave it at that. But this was a pretty good episode. They used a lot of water rights and real estate terms here. So I just wanted to show them to you. Eminent domain and riparian property rights, and so these terms do get used even in movies. So frontage, we've learned, is what is frontage? Frontage is the width of the front of the lot. So unless it's a waterway, and then it's a waterfront property, because then the frontage is measured on the water side, because that's the more valuable side of the property. So anytime you see a measurement of a property, like if it says 50 by 100-foot lot, the first number indicates the width of the front of the lot, the frontage. Like this. So here's the street on this side down at the bottom, and you have a 50 by 100 lot. You have 50 foot of frontage, that's 100 feet deep. Now, if it's a waterfront property, the frontage is measured on the back side of the lot, the side that's actually facing the water. A hereditament, page 97 here. A hereditament is anything that can be inherited. Yeah, that's pretty obvious. So I doubt you're going to get a question about that on exam. But you may see these words, Hereditament is anything that can be inherited. And chattel, often referred to as chattel or chattels with an S or without an S, is tangible personal property. Now, don't get lazy and say that if I ask you what chattel is, don't say personal property, because you need to elaborate a little bit more. That could be wrong. There is intangible personal property. So chattel's not just personal property. It is tangible personal property that you could touch or feel. It's usually something that's movable and not attached to the real estate. It's tangible personal property, like your furniture, your bedroom set, your clothing, right? These things are known as chattel, tangible personal property. Real estate, land, and anything permanently attached to it. Personal property is usually movable, like your vehicles and your clothing and your furniture. Fixtures are items that were once personal property, but have now been attached to the real estate in such a manner that it became part of the real estate. And a fixture is different from a trade fixture. Trade fixture, the word trade indicates a business. You guys are here to learn a new trade, right? The trade of real estate. a trade fixture is a fixture that's used to conduct business. Um, and it is considered personal property and can be removed by the tenant as long as they remove it before the lease expires. Like gas pumps at a gas station, the sinks in a beauty salon, the stoves and hoods in restaurants, things of that nature. All right. Now, the difference between transferring the ownership of real estate and transferring the ownership of personal property differ. Real property ownership is transferred by some sort of deed, whereas personal property is transferred by bill of sale. Sometimes you'll get a question out of the database of thousands of questions on this. How do you transfer the ownership of real property versus personal property? Real property is transferred by deed, document called a deed. Personal property is transferred by a bill of sale. That's your receipt. Right? All right. Corporeal or tangible assets are something you could touch and feel. Incorporeal or intangible assets are based on emotions like views and rights or interests, such as stocks or leases that have value. Chattel is tangible personal property. It's usually movable and not attached to the real estate. A deed is a document used to transfer real property ownership, while a bill of sale is used to transfer personal property. Severance is the process of transforming real property to personal, like a tree. You cut down the tree, severing it from the earth. It is now personal property. A tree is part of the real estate, but you can cut down that tree and now it's considered personal property. Now it's a Christmas tree all of a sudden, right? As an example. So that's done through the process of severance. An emblement, well, this is a term you'll probably get, these bolded ones. An emblement are things that are annual crops like wheat, corn, and garden vegetables that that need to be planted every year. Otherwise, they don't come back on their own. They are considered personal property. And even a tenant farmer is one that does not own the farm, they're leasing it, can come back and pick the fruits of their labor even after a farm had been sold, because they planted that seed, they tilled the soil, they planted the seeds, they cared for that crop. They got to wait for it to get to the point that it's ready to be picked. And so even after a farm has been sold, they could come back and harvest that crop. That's an emblement. What kind of property is an emblement?
Annual crops.
And what kind of property is it? Personal or real? Is it real estate or is it personal property?
Personal.
Personal. There's only two kinds of property on this planet. It's either real estate or personal property. So emblements are personal property. Remember, any plants that grow that do not require you to plant seeds every year for them to come back, they're part of the real estate. This is personal property, though. Interesting thing to know, though. Sometimes you may have issues with people when selling real estate. I had one girl in my class, she was buying a house while she was taking the class, and she had to take a day off so that she could do the closing or do the final walkthrough, I think she was doing. And so she did the final walkthrough, and she's like, one thing that was she loved about the property was how beautifully manicured the lawn was, and had all these pretty flowers all over the place, planted all over. And she came back to class the next day, and she's like, son of a gun. She's like, I went to do the final walkthrough, and the lady that owned the house, she was out there on her hands and knees with the little shovel thing, and she was digging out the flowers and putting them in pots to take with her. Now, is she able to do that?
Yes.
Well, it depends. Are those flowers that come back every year on their own, or are they ones that you need to plant every year because they die every winter?
Oh, are they annuals or perennials?
Yeah, yeah. So there's a thing to know. But either way, she was like, I didn't want to make a big deal of it. She's like, I got too much going on. I just can't. I was taking the real estate class and dealing with this. She's like, I just can't, with this lady. I was like, okay, all right. Interesting though. But yeah, stuff I guess like that does happen. I mean, I used to have uh, we used to have an issue. My dad, he always had gardens in the yard, and our backyard was always a garden. He was like, had the Pennsylvania still in him. He thought he lived on a farm, so he turned our yard into a pretty much a garden, did all kind of gardening. And there used to be a little old lady that lived across the street from us. She used to come over, just go into the backyard and start picking tomatoes. Yeah, I seen that. I was like, "What the hell are you doing?" She was walking out with like a bag full of tomatoes. I was like, "What are you doing in her yard?" Uh, so fixtures are items that were once personal property that have been attached to and permanently affixed to the real estate, becoming part of the real estate. Trade fixtures, well, they're personal property attached to the real estate. However, they're they're meant for business purposes. So they're still, even after they're attached to the real estate, they're still considered personal property and can be removed by the tenant as long as they remove it before the lease expires. Because, when a lease expires, you should have all your stuff out already, right? Anything you leave behind can become the property of the landlord. I'll leave that up there if you guys want to snap a picture of this and get all these terms in one shot. We will be highlighting them all over the place. We already started to. Okay. So, page 98. Implements are annual crops such as wheat, corn, and garden vegetables and are considered personal property. All right, now here I have this with a bracket around it. I just said should know, but it's not necessarily something you need to study, but you should know it. We are allowed to sell mobile homes. Resale. We're allowed to broker the resale of mobile homes, not new mobile homes, because we're not licensed motor vehicle dealers. However, if the axles are permanently removed from the mobile home and it's attached to a foundation, it can be considered part of the real estate now. So mobile homes are personal property. However, if the axles are permanently removed and it's attached to a foundation, it's now part of the real estate. Why is this important to know? Because how do you transfer the ownership of personal property versus real estate? Real estate, you transfer it by deed, personal property by bill of sale. So an article that was once personal property that has been attached to the land or a building that it is now considered part of the real estate is a fixture. And above the word trade, write business, because that's what the word trade means, business, right? And it is personal property, trade fixtures. So fixtures are legally considered real estate, but trade fixtures are legally considered to be personal property.
Got it.
Got it.
Good. All right. And so here's my slide just explaining a lot of the same stuff, what a fixture is versus a trade fixture. And when selling residential property, it's important to know the difference. And what are the legal tests of determining whether an article is a fixture and part of the real estate versus personal property? Well, the intention of the parties who installed the item, the method of annexation, the adaptation of the article to the real estate, and the relationship of the parties. So there you go, clear as mud. Now, not all judges rule uniformly. So if there should be an argument and it goes to court between people about, oh, you're not supposed to take that, oh, you took that, not all judges rule uniformly, meaning ruling the same on all items. So it's not always clear as to what is considered real property and what is personal property, even with these tests. So the real estate agent should always ask and make clear when getting a listing what the seller's taking with them and including in the sale, and what they'll leave behind. It's also good to note on the listing agreement or the seller's property condition disclosure report. Some things that become arguments a lot of times are like things like chandeliers or the sconce lighting that's mounted on the walls, stuff like that, the fancy stuff like that. Sometimes people will take it with them instead of leaving it behind, but they can't just leave dangling wires from the ceiling.
Gotta replace it with something.
Although they may try, yeah, they should replace it with some sort of lighting. But hold on a second. Don't just replace it with something, because the buyer saw that property maybe with that chandelier there and they fell in love with the entryway with that gorgeous chandelier. Now they go to do their final walkthrough and it's gone. They made their offer based on that chandelier that was there. It blew them away. They love that feature. So when you buy that property and you make an offer on a property, sellers cannot physically alter that property unless they made the buyers aware that they were going to, and they agreed to it.
Can the buyer now back out for that because of that?
Yes, because the seller's in breach of contract. That's like you putting an offer in to buy a property, and now the seller rips all the cabinets out of the kitchen and replaces them with cheaper ones. Right? Yeah. Whoa. Wait, I love that beautiful cherry wood cabinets and the glass inlays and the fancy shelving and the countertops and the beautiful sink. And now you ripped it all out and replaced it with something else. I didn't make an offer on that. My offer price was based on the fancy stuff, not this crap. Right? Or can a seller take the toilet bowl with them when they move?
Yeah, if they replace it with another one.
If they said that they were going to take it and the buyers was in agreement on it. See, I had one instance in a class when we were still teaching in the classroom environment, in-person classroom environment. And I asked this question to the class. I said, can a seller take their toilet bowl with them when they move? And everybody was like, no, that's part of the real estate. It's a fixture. And then one lady was like, Nuh-uh. She's like, I sell my house. I'm taking my toilet with me.
Mm.
Everybody shot her a look. They're like, what? What are you talking about? You take the toilet. And then she started to construct an argument, and it started to make actually pretty good sense. She's like, I'm a tall woman. She said, and my husband's even taller than me. She's like, you know how hard it is to sit on you little people toilets? She's like, we got these, we had to shop around and find a toilet that was comfortable for us to sit on. Otherwise it's like we're sitting on a little kiddie toilet. And I was like, you know what? You're making a pretty good argument. I would have never thought of that because you're a tall person. The average person would not be thinking about that. That's actually a pretty good argument. However, that person that made an offer to purchase your property, what if they're tall too? And that was a feature that they liked. They saw how tall that toilet was, and maybe they bought it because that they really liked that feature. And now you're removing it and replacing it with something else. You would still need to inform the buyers before they put offers in on the property that you're going to be replacing the toilets when you move. You're taking the toilets with you because it's still part of the real estate. It's a fixture. And you can't alter the real estate when somebody makes an offer on your property. You can't be changing the real estate now and taking whatever you want with you. You'd be in breach of contract. It's okay if you let them know in advance, put it in the listing. Seller is taking the toilet with them. Sounds kind of weird. Seller's taking the toilet with them, but they're going to be replacing it with something else. She made a good argument, but either way, she'd still be in breach of contract if she didn't get that buyer's approval first. Okay, so here's that legal test of a fixture on that page there. Same thing. All right, so final walkthrough. The final walkthrough. You should do a final walkthrough of the property that you're buying. Now, when do you do a final walkthrough? Well, when the sellers moved all their stuff out, right? That's typically the time to do the final walkthrough to make sure that when they move their stuff out, they didn't gouge the floors or put holes in walls or remove anything they weren't supposed to, or leave any junk furniture or garbage behind. You're supposed to be leaving a house behind in broom clean condition. That doesn't mean that the seller needs to scrub the property. It just means that they need to not leave any piles of trash behind or garbage, right? So broom clean condition. But I always did the final walkthrough when they moved their stuff out. But I'm going to tell you, they should probably do the final walkthrough on your way to closing. All it takes is one. It's very inconvenient, because the seller may have moved their stuff out days before the closing. It would make more sense to just do the final walkthrough then, right? But listen, all it takes is one issue. I had a problem with this once where it was actually a high-end home, a nice home, very expensive. And we did the final walkthrough the evening before the closing. And on our way to we did the final walkthrough the evening before the closing, but the real estate agent gave me a call after we did that. And she asked if, since the property was on my way to the closing, if I could do her a favor and if she gave me the lockbox key code, if I could go pick up the lockbox from the property and bring it to closing for her, because it was out of her way, but it was on my way. I was like, yeah, sure, I can do you a solid like that, no problem. And so the day of the closing, I stopped by, I go to get the lockbox. I had to go to the bathroom real quick. So I ran in really quick, did one quick run through the house again, even though we just did a final walkthrough the evening before. And then I locked up the house. I ran to closing. I get there, the attorney's asking them a question. They're like, so did you guys get a chance to do the final walkthrough? Was everything all right? And they're like, yeah, everything was okay. We did it last night. And I was like, oh, we got a problem. And they're looking at me. What do you mean we got a problem? We just did the final walkthrough last night. Everything was fine. I said, yeah, remember that beautiful, gorgeous, custom high-end kitchen that was there? It's gone. The guy must have had a whole crew of people come in. Um, they had these 42-inch custom cherry cabinets with glass windows and little fancy gold inlays. They had granite countertops and some fancy sinks, all Viking appliances. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Viking appliances, buco dollars, you know. Um, so it was all gone. The only thing that was there were pipes sticking out of the floor and the wall. They didn't even replace with anything. They just they gutted the kitchen.
Wow.
Yeah. Could you imagine that? Coming back from the closing after purchasing a house, you go so excited to go to your new home and enjoy that beautiful kitchen that was there, and then just to see that it's all gone, it's been stripped out, you've been robbed. You got to file an insurance claim and file police reports your first day moving into a house. So thank God the agent asked me to stop by and pick up the lockbox, and I caught it. So I brought it up. I was like, after we went and we saw the property, this guy, he went in there and he cleared you out. He removed the cabinets. He literally took the kitchen sink. I mean, granite countertops. What good is that going to do you? I mean, those things are cut and for the particular shape and layout, right? And you know how heavy those things are? He must have had a whole crew of people in there to remove that. Now, so I got in his face and I started yelling at him because I was pissed. I was like, listen, this is a short sale that you're doing. They're by them purchasing, they're helping you avoid foreclosure and have your credit completely destroyed. And we're working with your bank and now you're going to go and try to screw over my clients, the buyers, for by stealing the kitchen. What the hell is wrong with you? I was like, you know what? You're in breach of contract right now. And they could just walk away from this transaction because you broke the contract without having a good legal excuse to do so. You're in breach of contract by stripping that kitchen out. They could back out of the deal right now. You're going to get foreclosed on and they're going to sue you. Or you have the option of bringing back those expensive Viking appliances so that we could inspect them. Bring them back and we'll inspect them, make sure that you did not mess them up in the process. But as far as the cabinets and sink and the granite countertops, who knows if you cracked them or did any damage. Keep them, do whatever the hell it was that you thought you were going to do with them, but you're going to pay them money so that they could get a new kitchen installed. You're going to pay them money for the cabinets and the countertops and the sinks and for the labor to get it installed. And if you don't, they're backing out of the deal. So you're not going to have a closing. Your bank is going to foreclose on you and the buyers are going to sue you. Listen, you've been living in this property for 6 years and didn't make a single mortgage payment and you were gainfully employed in all that time. So now you're going to feel jilted because you're losing the house. Dude, you just lived 6 years rent free, and now you're screwing over these buyers, these good people. I was like, you're an asshole. I told him.
How do you go 6 years without paying rent though?
A mortgage. He owned the property. He was making mortgage payments, and then the foreclosure was going through 6 years of foreclosure. Okay,
Wow.
and he didn't make any mortgage payments for 6 years.
I mean,
So the bank, or paying taxes. The bank was covering it. The bank was covering the tax bill, while he was then tried going through the short sale process. So he pocketed a lot of money in that time. It's not like he was losing anything. He probably made money on that sale while he lived there rent free, not paying any mortgage payment or taxes or anything, I basically told him, a lot of vulgarities to his face, and then I told him, this is what's going to go down. And then I left it to the attorneys to determine how much money he was going to pay them to get a new kitchen installed. And I told him it was a high-end kitchen too, but he has to bring back those Viking appliances, and then pay for the new cabinets and the installation and the sinks and all that.
I would go all out. I would say, yeah, I want a new kitchen with everything new. If you want the deal close.
Well, the Viking appliances, those things are very expensive. Yeah. So, yeah, he's going to bring back the ones that were there. They made an offer based on whatever the appliances were there. They weren't brand spanking new, but they're very high end, expensive appliances. So they had a Viking refrigerator, freezer, a Viking oven, and I forget what kind of dishwasher it was. I don't know if it was Viking or some other brand. I think it may have been another brand that was high end. But he removed all that stuff. So I had him bring it back, those appliances at least. And we ended up doing a dry closing where they signed the paperwork and everything, but they didn't process anything yet until he brought those appliances back and we could inspect them. And then he had to bring money to give to the buyers at closing so they could get a new kitchen. And he was lucky that they were willing to, because they still wanted the house, that they were willing to go through that. But now they have to go through getting contractors and shopping for the, cabinetry and all that stuff. Yeah, it's a pain in the ass.
There's a
So,
time.
so when should you do your final walkthrough based on my lesson here?
I would go hours before the closing.
Yeah, on the way to closing. Yeah.
Or on the way to closing. I
Even
mean,
though we did it just the night before the closing, I think guy went in there right after we left, I guess, with a whole crew and stripped it out. But
something that
it's
something that
crazy.
for experience, and I get an experience before I get my license.
Yeah. Well, live through my experiences that I'm sharing with you guys so you don't have to ever deal with it. Now, this is the only time I ever dealt with such a thing, but I've heard stories like this before, but I never dealt with them until this guy. And after that, I was like, it's a pain in the butt, but I'm going to do my final walkthrough on the way to closing. Okay. It may be an inconvenience, but do it. All right. So we do walkthroughs at many stages during the home buying process. When you're looking for a home, you go walking through the house. When you get appraisals done, that's a walkthrough. Home inspections or the follow-up home inspections, like if work had to be done that the home inspector found was wrong and then you negotiated and the seller was supposed to fix something, we got to make sure that we get the home inspector through the house again to make sure the work was done properly. Don't forget about that. A lot of agents forget to do that follow-up walkthrough. Municipal inspections for the fire and certificate of occupancy, right? You need to get those city inspections. And then lastly, the final walkthrough to make sure that the seller moved all their crap out, didn't remove anything they weren't supposed to, and didn't do any damage. They left the property in broom clean condition, meaning they didn't leave any old broken furniture and garbage left behind that they were supposed to remove, right? Because then that's going to be an issue on the new owner to try to get rid of it. All right, and this is not the first time you saw this slide, right? Title is just a word that means ownership. There's no document in real estate called title. How do we transfer the ownership of real estate?
Bill self.
A deed. That's right.
I did, but I thought it was a personal.
Deed.
D
Okay.
is for okay.
Yeah, I thought you said deed. Okay, so deed. So a deed is a document used to transfer ownership, but is not proof of ownership. Deeds can be used to transfer your ownership or partial ownership or your rights, air rights, mineral rights, the subsurface rights. Ownership is transferred upon delivery and acceptance of the deed itself, which is why they don't need to be signed or dated by the buyer until they're ready to record it in the public records. And why do we record documents in the public record? To put the world on notice of our interest in that property now. So a deed is not proof of ownership. What is? What are the four evidences of title? An abstract of title with attorney's opinion, certificate of title, a title insurance policy, which is more commonly used here in New Jersey, and a Torrens certificate, which is not used in New Jersey at all because we do not have a Torrens system. And that concludes Chapter 5. So let's do the key terms to review for Chapter 5. There are 2 key terms to review for this chapter. Page 100. You guys ready?
Yes, sir.
All right. The wearing away of land usually due to the actions of wind or water. What do we call that?
Erosion.
Erosion is correct. 10 is A. Anything that can be inherited is called a
Hereditament.
a hereditament. Yes.
Hereditament.
Yeah, it even sounds like inherited, right? So 12 is B. Once personal property, now real estate. What do we call something that was once personal property that's now part of the real estate?
Is a chat.
Once personal property and now real estate.
Yep.
Fixture.
Yeah, it's now fixed to the property. A chandelier, you go to the store, you buy a chandelier, it's in a box, that's your personal property, right? But now you bolt it to the ceiling and hardwire it to the electrical. It is now fixed and part of the real estate, right? A mailbox, you go buy a mailbox, it's personal property. Now you bolt it to the real estate, and now it's part of the real estate. It's a fixture. It's now fixed. All right. So 11 was C. Rights of a landlord to use waters adjoining streams or waterways that are not affected by tidal currents. Rights of a landlord to use waterways adjoining streams or waterways that are not affected by tidal currents. They are non-navigable waters.
Well, that's what we just talked. That's what we just saw. Marty Bird, right?
It's we just run through this.
The riparian rights.
Riparian rights. Yes, 13 is D. Riparian rights. Sudden change in the course of a stream. The sudden change of a course of a stream.
Changing. Is that
Sudden change of the course of a stream.
Yeah, there's 2 words that almost even look alike. They're actually even in this key term list next to each other.
is that evolution?
It is avulsion, the one that has the S in it for sudden change of a course of a stream. Avulsion. 4 is E. That's correct. Tangible personal property is also referred to as
Littoral rights.
tangible personal property.
Is that 6 shot?
Chattel. Yep. Chattel or chattels. Yes. 6 is F. Solid material deposited by a body of water. What do you call that solid material? That dirt, rock, sand, soil?
It's wait.
Alluvium.
What do you actually call the dirt, rock, sand, or soil that's deposited by the water?
Alluvion.
Alluvion, the one with 2 L's. You remember, you gain an L, you gain some dirt. That's the dirt you gained.
You get it all.
Right. There you go. 3 is G. Alluvion. An increase of land caused by the gradual depositing of solid material by the actions of the water. What do you call the depositing of alluvion by the water?
As creation.
Accretion.
Accretion.
Accretion. I'm sorry.
Kind of like I like to mispronounce words to try to remember them too. Accretion sounds like increase. Increase,
Increase.
right?
Accretion.
It's an increase of the land, right? So by the water. One is H. One is H. Another word for tangible.
Tangible. Is that
Yeah, say it.
corporeal? Corporeal?
Corporeal. Yeah, you got to sound it out. It's not a normal word that we usually use. Corporeal. Corporeal. Plus, there's an extra O in there. A lot of people say corporeal. It's actually
Corporeal.
corporeal. Yeah. So 7 is I. Rights of a landowner to use bodies of water affected by tidal currents. They have commercial shipping going through them.
Implement.
We're talking about the rights of a landowner whose
Littoral.
land borders navigable waters controlled by the tides.
Littoral rights.
Littoral property rights. 5 is J. But you see how they worded it just a little bit differently? They said rights of landowners to use bodies of water affected by tidal currents. Okay. So, but they're saying the same thing basically. 5 is J. Belonging to the owner of the land below. Be careful, because if the land is below, what is above? Belong to the owner of the land below.
Is that the A right?
Yes, it is. 2 is K. Annual crops. What do we call annual crops that are considered personal property?
Implements.
Implement.
Implements. Yep, implements. 9 is L there. Leave real estate to someone by will. To leave real estate. Devise. Not to be confused with demise, which is a transfer of property by lease. 8 is M, correct. All right, key terms 2. Before we get started in doing key terms 2, next to letter C, I want you to write commercial property. At the end of it there, it says removable by tenants. Write in commercial property. And then after letter J, where it says specific tract of land, write with legally defined boundaries. With legally defined boundaries. With legally defined boundaries.
I got it.
Okay. All right. So let's start off with the first one. The earth, including the air above.
Land.
Land. 2 is A. Land, improvements, and bundle of rights.
Land improvements and bundle of rights.
Correct. Land, improvements, and bundle of rights.
Real estate.
6 is B, real estate. Removable by tenants in commercial property.
Trade fixture.
Trade fixture. 10 is C. Subsurface rights can also be described as
Mineral rights.
mineral rights. 3 is D. All right, now it's an English class. A synonym for real estate.
Synonym for real estate.
Yeah, these are
Yeah, these are words, different words that
Yeah, that
mean
means
the
the same
same
thing.
thing. Yeah.
Real property,
Real property or realty. 7 is E, correct. Creation of dry land by the gradual withdrawal of water.
Creation of dry.
Yeah, by the gradual withdrawal of water or the drying up of water. I used my hairline as an example.
reliction,
Reliction, there you go. Reliction. 8 is F. Um, everything that is not real property is,
fake news,
well, there's two kinds of property in this world, right? It's either real property or
personal.
personal
Personal.
property or
Personal.
personality. Yes.
Personal.
5 is G. See, that's why I told you, if you ask yourself a question about the question, often the answer will pop in your head, without even looking at the answer options. Everything that's not real property is, oh, wait, we just did that. 5 is G. Intangible. Another word for intangible means the same thing. Intangible.
Incorporeal,
Incorporeal. 1 is H. Ownership of minerals, oil, and so on. Ownership of minerals, oil, and so on.
subsurface,
Subsurface rights. 9 is I. And a specific tract of land with legally defined boundaries.
Parcel.
Parcel. 4 is J. And that concludes chapter 5. All right.